The first time Elara saw him, he was standing under a maple tree with a camera around his neck and a notebook in his hand. He wasn't particularly striking, dark hair in need of a trim, a shirt wrinkled from the summer breeze, but he had an expression that made her stop walking, as if the world had paused just for him to notice something it had missed. She had come to the small town of Greenwood to escape. Her life in the city had become a tight web of deadlines, failed relationships, and an overwhelming sense that she was living someone else's dreams. Greenwood was her grandmother's town, a place she remembered only in fragments. Wildflowers behind the fence, the scent of rain on dry soil, the taste of peaches. She hadn't planned to stay long. Just enough time to breathe, maybe write something. Again, she hadn't touched her manuscript in months. The house her grandmother left her stood quiet and undemanding, a place with creaking floors and dusty shelves. It accepted her presence without question. He noticed her before she noticed herself again. "You're not from here," he said the second time they met. He was sitting at the corner cafe sketching in his notebook. She hadn't expected him to remember her. "No," she admitted, placing her coffee on the table beside his sketchbook. "But neither are you." He smiled at that, closing the notebook slightly. "Guilty? I'm just here for the summer." "Tourist? Photographer," he corrected. "And sometimes writer. I like small towns. They remind me that time isn't a thief. It just walks slower here." She liked the way he said things, not dramatic, not trying to impress, just honest. His name was Adrian, and as the weeks passed, they fell into the kind of rhythm that didn't need to be labeled. Walks turned into conversations. Conversations turned into silences they didn't mind sharing. They explored forgotten trails, picked strawberries at the local farm, and spent long evenings on the porch, watching the sky trade colors with the sun. He showed her how to see again. "This place is magic," he said one twilight. "Not because it's special, but because you finally have time to see what you missed." She found herself laughing more, writing again. Her characters, once distant, started speaking to her as though they were old friends waiting for her to return. Adrian never asked about her past, and she never asked about his. Their closeness grew in the present moment, in shared slices of peach pie and the rustle of leaves beneath a fading sky. She had no idea where he went after their mornings ended or what lay in the camera roll he kept so carefully guarded. But she never pushed, and he never ran. One evening, they found themselves caught in a sudden downpour. They took shelter beneath a worn-out gazebo by the lake. His hair was soaked, shirt clinging to his chest, and she couldn't stop laughing. Neither could he. They stood there drenched and breathless, the space between them charged with a question neither had asked. When he kissed her, it was quiet, like a promise made under a whisper, not demanding, not urgent, just real. Like a single note in a song you didn't know you remembered. From that night on, something shifted. They didn't speak of it, but every glance, every brush of fingers, held more. The nights became longer, their conversations deeper. She learned that he had once lived in cities, too, that he had been running as much as she had. That love had left him before, but not without lessons. And then came September. He grew quieter, and she grew restless. There was a sadness in his eyes she hadn't noticed before, a knowing that time was running out. "I have to leave soon," he said one morning as they watched the fog lift from the lake. "I never stay in one place for long." She looked at him, feeling her heart ache in a way it hadn't in years. "Then why come here?" He turned to her. "To remember. To remind myself that I can still feel." She wanted to be angry, to ask him to stay. But she couldn't. Because wasn't that what she had done too? Come here to remember? Their final week was a collection of moments painted in gold. Every touch, every word held meaning. They visited the sunflower fields one last time. They sat under the stars and talked about books they hadn't finished. She read him lines from her new manuscript, and he took photos of her when she wasn't looking. On his last morning, he left a letter on her porch. No dramatic confessions, no false promises, just truth. "Elara, you gave me something I thought I'd lost. Wonder. You reminded me what it's like to belong, even if only for a season. I don't know where the road takes me next, but I'll carry this with me. I'll carry you. A. She cried for a long time, not because he left, but because he had come. And sometimes that's the bigger miracle. The town felt emptier without him, the porch quieter, but her manuscript was full, her heart fuller. She stayed through the winter, watched the snow cover the garden, and then melt again in spring. She walked the same trails, now alone, and found that solitude no longer felt like loneliness. One afternoon, months later, she received a package. Inside was a small leather-bound book, his photographs, of Greenwood, of her, and at the back, a single line in his handwriting. Sometimes love isn't forever, but it's enough. She smiled. She understood now.